Welcome to HFY Sci-Fi Love and War Story, a channel where mysterious and captivating tales of aliens, love, and intergalactic wars come to life. If you love otherworldly encounters, unsolved mysteries, and adventurous journeys across the cosmos, stay with us to dive into a universe full of wonder. Today, we bring you the story of Leah, a being exiled from the celestial court, wandering on Earth in search of a place to call home. From the first moments of uncertainty to finding acceptance and friendship, Leah's journey is one of discovering her purpose, forging bonds, and finding herself in a world she never expected. Join us as we explore this mysterious tale of connection, where the human heart reaches across galaxies. The night wrapped itself in an eerie silence, the kind that gnawed at your senses, making every step feel heavier, every breath a little colder. The moon was hidden behind thick clouds, casting the world in a deep, suffocating darkness. The only break in the stillness came from the faint flickering of a distant street lamp, its light barely enough to push back the shadows that swirled like smoke across the deserted park. The protagonist walked alone, the sound of their footsteps muffled by the frost that had settled over the earth. Their breath came out in visible clouds, vanishing as quickly as it formed. The cold had sunk into their bones, making them wish they'd stayed inside where warmth and comfort awaited. Then, amidst the quiet, they heard a soft, desperate whimper. At first, it seemed distant, almost like a distant cry of an animal in pain. They paused, looking around, but the park was empty, the trees swaying gently in the wind. Nothing but the darkness, the cold, and the silence. The whimper came again, sharper this time, closer. The protagonist's heart quickened, and they turned towards the sound. As they moved deeper into the park, the figure emerged huddled beneath a tree, barely visible against the dark backdrop of the night. It wasn't quite human. It was a woman, but not one that could be mistaken for anything familiar. Her skin was a pale, shimmering silver, like moonlight captured in the form of flesh. The street lamp's flickering light caught the delicate glow of her skin, making her look almost ethereal, unreal. Her eyes were not like any eyes the protagonist had seen before. Deep violet, glowing faintly, like twin galaxies swirling within them. They reflected the faint light around her, shimmering with an otherworldly radiance. Her hair, if it could even be called that, was a cascade of thin, thread-like tendrils. They swirled and moved, as though caught in a breeze that no one else could feel. The air around her seemed to vibrate, charged with something unseen, something unfamiliar. She lifted her head, and for the first time, their eyes locked. The gaze she gave was full of something strange: fear, hope, desperation, all intertwined. Her voice, when she spoke, was fragile, almost musical, like the faint sound of chimes carried by the wind. "Please, help me." The words were soft but carried the weight of a plea. A plea born of desperation, of a need that cut through the air, sharp and urgent. The protagonist's mind raced, their voice barely a whisper, uncertain if this was reality or some kind of dream. What are you?" they stammered. "I am Leah," she said, her voice trembling with the weight of something hidden, something long buried. "A servant of the celestial court, but I was cast out. Abandoned. I have nowhere to go." She looked up at them, her eyes wide, pleading. "Please, help me." The desperation in her voice was palpable. It was like nothing the protagonist had ever heard before, a cry from the depths of someone lost, someone alone in a world they did not belong to. The protagonist's mind struggled to comprehend. Alien. A real alien. This was not some sci-fi fantasy. This was real. But why them? Why was this creature, this stranger, asking for their help? The question spilled out of them before they could stop it, Why me? Her voice softened, filled with something that seemed almost fragile. You are the first to show me kindness, the first to stop and listen. Her eyes locked with theirs, her gaze burning with sincerity. I have nothing to offer but my loyalty, my service. Please, do not leave me here to die. Her words hit the protagonist like a blow. It was impossible. It was madness. And yet, there she was real, standing in front of them, trembling in the cold. The desperation in her eyes spoke to something deep inside them, something that couldn't be ignored. After a long pause, the protagonist spoke, their voice quieter than before. All right, they said. You can come with me. But we'll figure this out as we go. The alien's face lit up with an expression of immense gratitude. She stood with a grace that was almost otherworldly, her slender frame towering over the protagonist by a full foot. There was a fragility to her, a delicate strength that made the protagonist want to protect her. As they walked back to their apartment, the world around them felt muted, distant. The occasional passerby stared curiously at the sight of a tall, silver-skinned woman with glowing violet eyes, but no one spoke. The streets were silent, the city unaware of the stranger walking among them. The protagonist's apartment was a small, cluttered space, warmed by the soft glow of dim lights and the gentle hum of a heater. The moment they crossed the threshold, the warmth seemed to embrace them, a stark contrast to the biting cold of the night. It was a comfort they didn't realize they needed until now. Leah stepped in hesitantly, her eyes wide as she took in the simple surroundings. The apartment was ordinary furniture mismatched and worn, a few books scattered on the floor, and a clutter of items that hadn't been put away. It wasn't much, but it was theirs. Leah's eyes scanned every corner, her expression one of quiet wonder. "This is your home?" she asked softly, her voice carrying a note of disbelief. The protagonist felt a flush of embarrassment, rubbing the back of their neck. "Yeah, it's not much, but it's home." Leah stepped closer, her gaze never leaving the space. "I will make it worthy of you," she said. "I will clean, cook anything you need." The protagonist quickly shook their head. "You don't need to do all that. Just make yourself comfortable. We'll figure this out." But Leah's expression didn't waver. Her gaze was unwavering, full of determination and gratitude. There was a softness in her smile, something that seemed to make the whole room brighter, warmer even. As the protagonist took off their coat and dropped it on the couch, they couldn't help but glance back at Leah. There she was, standing in the middle of their living room, her figure strange and alien, yet her presence oddly comforting. It was as if the very air around her hummed with energy, something both unfamiliar and fascinating. Her large violet eyes shimmered in the soft light as she took in the surroundings. Despite her ethereal beauty, she was just as fragile as any other soul caught between two worlds, and the protagonist couldn't help but feel the weight of her situation, the heavy loneliness that seemed to follow her like a shadow. Over the following days, Leah settled into her new life with a strange mix of innocence and determination. The apartment, once dim and cluttered, slowly transformed under her diligent hands. Her movements, fluid and graceful, were almost otherworldly, as though she were performing a ritual rather than mundane tasks. She would glide across the room, sweeping the floors with an almost reverent touch, her silvery fingers moving with meticulous care. The soft hum of her presence filled the space, as if the air itself bent around her in deference to her will. Though Leah had no understanding of human cuisine, she threw herself into cooking with an enthusiasm that was both endearing and overwhelming. The first attempt at preparing a meal was a disaster. The kitchen was filled with the smell of burnt spices and charred food, a chaotic mixture of unfamiliar ingredients. Despite this, she approached each meal with the same dedication, her violet eyes alight with curiosity and a deep desire to understand this strange world. Leah watched the protagonist closely, mimicking their every move with intensity. One day, she picked up a phone from the table, her fingers tracing the smooth surface. She turned it over in her hands, her brows furrowed in confusion. "Leah," softly, as if to herself, "what is this, a phone?" Protagonist, smiling softly, "It's a phone. You use it to talk to people far away. It's how we communicate." Leah's large violet eyes blinked, her curiosity growing. She held the phone to her ear, pressing it to her cheek as though she could hear something from it even without turning it on. "Leah, but how do the voices come through it?" Protagonist, chuckling, "It's all through signals, Leah. It connects us to one another. We can be far apart and still talk." Leah nodded slowly, absorbing the information with a concentration that bordered on reverence. She wasn't merely asking questions, she was learning, almost like a child discovering the world for the first time. But each question she asked about Earth and its technology seemed to open a new door in her mind, a doorway to a world she could never have imagined back in the celestial court. As the days passed, she seemed to grow more comfortable with the routines of Earth. Yet, beneath her curiosity and the eagerness to serve, there was a profound loneliness that lingered in her eyes. She rarely spoke about her past, but every so often, she would share fragments of her life in the celestial court. On one evening, while they sat together on the couch, the flickering light from the television casting shadows across the room, Leah began to speak in a quiet voice. "Leah, I was a servant to the Empress. A lowly one, but I served the court faithfully. They are magnificent, the Empress and her court, but they are not like you, not like humans." She paused, her gaze drifting to the window, where the stars glistened like distant jewels. "Leah, I tried to help those suffering. I couldn't stand to see the lower castes in pain, their lives reduced to servitude. So, I tried to change things. I helped them, but they saw it as a betrayal. And so, they sent me here. To live or die, alone. A punishment for my kindness." Her voice broke slightly, the words heavy with grief. She didn't look at the protagonist, but they could sense the ache in her tone, the weight of rejection from a world she had once called home. "Leah, but here, I can breathe. I can learn. And for that, I am grateful." The protagonist watched her in silence, their heart aching at the vulnerability she revealed. They hadn't expected to find a being so deeply touched by human emotions, especially one from a world so far beyond their own. One evening, the protagonist and Leah sat together by the window. The night was clear, the sky a deep canvas of black dotted with countless stars. The city below was quiet, the occasional car passing by, but in the apartment, it was as if time itself had slowed. The warmth of the room contrasted with the cool breeze that filtered in through the cracked window, carrying with it the scent of the earth. Leah leaned against the window, her eyes fixed on the heavens. Her violet gaze seemed to pierce the night sky, searching for something lost, something distant. The stars above twinkled like tiny diamonds, so far away and yet so familiar. But to Leah, they were more than just stars. They were memories. They were her past. The protagonist watched her, the silence between them thick with unspoken thoughts. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, they broke the quiet. "Protagonist, do you miss your home?" Leah's gaze never wavered from the stars, but there was a sadness in her eyes that deepened as the question settled in her mind. She blinked slowly, as if she had to force the words to come. "Leah," quietly, "sometimes. Yes. I miss it. I miss the stars of my world, the light of the Empress. But I know I can never return. They would never take me back. I don't belong there anymore." Her voice was soft, as if speaking those words aloud made them more real, more permanent. The stars, those cold, distant lights, held memories that she could never again reach. The celestial court, with all its power and grandeur, was a world she could never return to. She turned her head slowly, meeting the protagonist's gaze. Her violet eyes shimmered with something that was neither sadness nor resignation, but gratitude, a deep, profound appreciation for this strange world, and the strange person who had opened their door to her. Leah, smiling faintly, "But this world is different. And it's mine now. And I'm grateful. I'm glad to be here with you." The warmth of the moment wrapped itself around them, a comforting presence that seemed to shield them from the coldness of the universe beyond. In this quiet, shared moment, the weight of the world outside seemed to lift, if only for a moment. The stars above, the vastness of the universe, felt just a little less daunting when they were together. A silence passed between them, not one of discomfort, but of understanding. Leah's hand, small and delicate, rested near the protagonist's on the windowsill. The contact, though light, was enough to bridge the distance between two worlds that had once been separated by an unfathomable expanse of space and time. For the first time, the protagonist felt that they truly understood. This world, this life, they weren't alone in it. Not anymore. And perhaps, for the first time, Leah felt that she wasn't alone either. As the days bled into weeks, the bond between the protagonist and Leah grew deeper, like roots of a tree intertwining beneath the surface. What started as a hesitant exchange of words and awkward silences began to blossom into something more, something unexpected, yet undeniably real. Leah, the alien servant, had become more than just a creature from another world. She had become a friend, a confidant, someone who understood things in a way that was both innocent and wise, as if she could see through the veil of the mundane and into the soul of the world itself. Her presence was no longer just a curiosity. It was a comfort, a quiet stillness that seemed to fill the space between them, making the apartment feel less like a lonely place and more like a sanctuary. Leah's smile, though faint, had become a constant source of light. The warmth of her presence, even in silence, was enough to make the protagonist feel as though they weren't alone in a world so vast and indifferent. They spent countless hours together, talking, laughing, learning about each other's worlds. Leah's insatiable curiosity about Earth, its strange customs, its intricate ways of life, never seemed to wane. She asked about the simplest things, as if each one held a profound secret, a deeper meaning. But there were moments, brief, fleeting, yet heavy with unspoken emotion, when Leah would look out at the stars. Her violet eyes would narrow, her expression distant, as though reaching across the abyss of space, toward a place she could never return to. The protagonist noticed these moments, when Leah's gaze seemed to linger too long on the night sky, when her thoughts were somewhere far beyond the city lights. It was as though, for all the comfort she had found on Earth, she was still searching for something that would never come back. And the protagonist wondered, with a quiet ache, if Leah would ever truly be happy here, if she would ever find peace, knowing that the stars she once called home were now just distant pinpricks in the blackness, forever out of reach. One evening, as they sat together on the couch, their feet tangled beneath a blanket, the protagonist spoke, their voice breaking the silence with a raw honesty that they hadn't expected. "Protagonist, I don't know what I would do without you, Leah." Leah looked at them, her eyes soft, reflecting the dim glow of the lamp. There was a quiet strength in her gaze, something ancient and knowing, yet still vulnerable. "Leah," softly, and I am glad to be here with you." Her words were a gentle balm to the protagonist's heart, a reassurance that despite the distance between their worlds, they had found something that was real, a connection that had defied the impossible and brought them together. Scene 6, The Decision. One night, as the wind whispered through the cracks in the rooftop, the protagonist and Leah sat side by side. The city sprawled beneath them, its lights twinkling like a sea of fireflies. The sky above was a velvet expanse, littered with countless stars, each one a tiny window into the vast unknown. It was quiet, save for the occasional hum of the distant city, and the soft rustle of the breeze in the air. Leah sat with her back straight, her slender figure outlined against the darkened sky. Her violet eyes were fixed on the stars, a glimmer of longing in them. The protagonist, unable to resist the pull of the question that had been gnawing at them for weeks, turned to her. "Protagonist, do you ever think about going back to your home?" The words hung in the air, a delicate thing, suspended between them. Leah didn't answer immediately. Instead, she stared at the heavens, her gaze distant, her expression unreadable. The moments stretched on, and the protagonist could feel the weight of her silence, the gravity of the question settling in. After what seemed like an eternity, Leah spoke, her voice low and measured, as if choosing each word carefully. "Leah," after a long pause, "sometimes I think about it. I think about the court, the stars of my world. But I know I can't go back. I could never return. Even if they allowed me, I don't think I would want to." She turned her head slowly to meet the protagonist's gaze, her violet eyes shimmering with the faintest trace of sorrow, but also with something else, something deeper. Something more profound. "Leah, this life, it's different. But it's mine now. And I'm grateful for it." The protagonist felt a warmth spread through them at her words. It wasn't the warmth of the sun, but something more subtle, more meaningful. The kind of warmth that comes when you realize that, even in the darkest corners of the universe, there is still light to be found. Protagonist, smiling softly, "I'm glad you're here." Leah's smile, small but genuine, tugged at the corners of her lips. It was a smile that spoke of acceptance, of understanding. She reached out, her delicate hand brushing against the protagonist's, a silent acknowledgement of the bond they had built, of the shared path they were walking together, no matter how uncertain it might be. "Leah," gently, "I am, too." For a moment, there was nothing but the sound of the wind, the distant hum of the city, and the unspoken connection between them. And as the stars watched from above, the protagonist realized that, perhaps, in this vast and mysterious universe, they had found something rare, a companion, a friend, a connection that defied all the odds. In the quiet of that night, beneath the endless sky, they knew that no matter what the future held, they would face it together. Because, for once, the vastness of the universe didn't seem so infinite anymore. The days bled into weeks, and weeks into months. Time, once a constant enemy that ticked away with cold indifference, now felt like something warm, something shared between two souls. In the quiet rhythm of their days, Leah's presence became something deeply ingrained in the fabric of the protagonist's life. She had found her place not as a servant, but as a companion. Her transformation was subtle but undeniable. At first, she had entered the apartment as a stranger, cast adrift from a world that had rejected her. Her silver skin and violet eyes had seemed like a cruel reminder of her fall from grace, a being exiled from a place of unimaginable power. But now, there was something different. Leah's gaze no longer lingered on the stars with the same longing. It was as if her own world had expanded, not outward into the infinite cosmos, but inward, into this small, humble apartment, this world that she had learned to call home. The quiet bond between her and the protagonist grew deeper, like roots slowly intertwining beneath the surface of the earth, unseen but strong. Her movements, once stiff and uncertain, had become fluid, graceful. The soft rustle of her tendril-like hair no longer felt like an alien trait, but a part of her natural beauty. She smiled more often now genuinely, without the mask of uncertainty that had once clouded her expression. She had become someone who belonged, not just in the apartment, but in the world itself. She still studied human life with fascination, but it was no longer from the perspective of an outsider. It was with the curiosity of someone who was learning to be a part of it, someone who wanted to understand the depths of human connection, the warmth of friendship, the beauty of shared moments. The protagonist could see the change in Leah's eyes. The sadness that had once lingered there, the weight of a distant world she could never return to, had begun to fade. She had found a new purpose. She had found a new home. It wasn't a palace among the stars, but it was real. And it was hers. In the mornings, she would wake early, her glowing silver skin catching the first light of dawn as she stood by the window, looking out at the world that had become her own. She had become an active part of the protagonist's life, no longer waiting for instructions, but contributing to the flow of their shared existence. Whether it was cooking meals, learning about human art, or simply sitting in quiet companionship, Leah was no longer the outsider. She was home. The protagonist, watching all of this unfold, couldn't help but feel a deep sense of pride in what Leah had become, a creature who had fallen from the stars but had, in the end, found her place among the stars of this new world. A world she could call her own, and one that, despite all its chaos and uncertainty, had become her sanctuary. One crisp evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the world in hues of orange and pink, the protagonist and Leah stood side by side on the rooftop of the apartment building. The city below them hummed with life, the lights twinkling like stars that had somehow found their way to Earth. The air was cool, but not uncomfortably so. There was a quiet peace that settled around them, as if the whole universe had paused just for a moment to take in the scene. Above them, the sky stretched infinitely, a vast canvas dotted with countless stars, each one a tiny spark in the black sea of the cosmos. Leah's violet eyes were fixed on them, but this time, there was no ache in her gaze. There was no longing, no sadness. There was only a quiet acceptance, a realization that her place in this world, in this life, was as real as the stars above them. The protagonist stood next to her, their body close but not touching, sharing the moment in silence. For all the unknowns that stretched out before them, for all the mysteries of the universe that still lay beyond their grasp, there was a sense of comfort in knowing they didn't have to face it alone. The protagonist turned to Leah, their voice soft but firm, carrying the weight of everything that had come before. "Protagonist, no matter what the future holds, we'll face it together, right?" Leah turned to them, her face illuminated by the soft glow of the city lights, her eyes shining with something profound: trust, loyalty, love, and an unspoken understanding of what they had become to each other. She smiled, a small, peaceful smile that held no traces of the uncertainty that had once plagued her. Leah, smiling, together. And in that simple word, that quiet promise, everything they had been through, every hardship and every triumph, seemed to fade into the background. For in this moment, beneath the stars, they knew that whatever the future held, whether filled with joy or challenges, they would face it side by side, bound by a connection that could not be broken. As the wind whispered around them, the protagonist and Leah stood together, looking out at the vastness of the universe, but no longer feeling small in its presence. Because they had found something bigger than the stars, bigger than the galaxies, each other. And for the first time, the endless expanse of the cosmos felt a little less infinite. Thank you for joining us today on HFY Sci-Fi Love and War Story. We hope you found magic and depth in Leah's journey. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss out on new stories from us. We'll see you in the next thrilling adventure in the vast universe.